Welcome to Family Recipe Radio. Thanks for tuning in, everybody out there. This is going to be a place for me to share stories I like and to share my music. And if you're here right now listening as we speak, a day oneer, thank you for being here. I salute you.
Program my shoes so that I can do the move, sliding back and forth across the dance floor. I cruise, lost in my dungeons. Which door do you want to choose? 100 different doors, behind them lie 100 different dooms. My shadow moves across the desert dunes. Can you read the runes? If you're not dead, can you leave the room? Sweeping up the blood and organs, man, I use a green broom, creeping out the crypt.
All right, welcome to episode 1. Come on inside, make yourself at home. Where's my couch, you ask? I don't have any furniture. I don't need it. I just sit on the ground and research. So, we're going to talk about some aliens today, and when I say aliens, I'm sure many of you are picturing the classic alien. Short, gray skin, just stepped out of a spaceship, probing mechanism in hand, coming towards you. But if these people are to be believed today, there's a whole different species out there, and they're giant bugs. So let me paint a picture of these really quickly. They're 6 to 7 feet tall. They have humanoid bodies, but they're wearing robes usually. So we can't really see their bodies, but they seem to be standing up like a person would. But their head is mantis-like, with big black eyes, similar to that of a gray's eyes. They have lots of bizarre behavior. They are always acting weird. Even when they're acting nice, they're still kind of crazy. There is variation, though. They do seem to be independent beings. And one note on aliens in general, I don't know if they're from another galaxy, I don't know if they're from another dimension, I don't know if they're just underground right now, I don't know if the Earth is hollow, there's literally no way to figure that out. The Earth might be hollow and full of giant bugs. There are literally countless explanations to what aliens could be, and today, I don't think we're going to figure that out, but it's okay, because these stories are fascinating, and I love them dearly. So with that, we're going to begin our investigation. So sit down, make yourself comfy, get all wrapped up in a blanket, get yourself some tea or something, pour a little whiskey in there maybe, and enjoy the stories of the Mantis People. Yes, brother, here we go. For our first experience ever, we have user MRG Wonk, and he titled this one, My Experience. This happened to me about 470 days ago. As for my background, I hold a bachelor's and a professional degree. I'm engaged in the profession that I studied, and I've been in this field for 17 years. My bachelor's is not in science. I've always been considered a weird guy. I loved UFO and conspiracy theories when I was a teenager and basically never gave them another thought after I was 18. When I was 19, I saw a gray, cigar-shaped UFO in Arizona, but I was up for 24 hours at that point, so I told one person I saw it and then chuckled. It was probably 20 miles away from me and disappeared in the blink of an eye. When I was 29 years old, I saw a red-orange orb with the elevation of about 1,000 feet travel over me at a speed of 50 miles per hour. I thought maybe it was a Chinese paper lantern in the wind. It was soon followed by 2 more orbs of the same color at the same speed. This time I was with about 50 people. None of them had an explanation. I called the UFO reporting hotline, and my biggest question was, has anyone else seen them? Other than that, I was truly a skeptic in the paranormal. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in Bigfoot. Are there aliens? Sure, but none of them have ever visited here because they're too damn far away. This was my default opinion from age 18 and forward. I even had friends who were obsessed with the stuff, but I never paid them any attention and thought they were crazy. You're crazy. When I was about 43 years old, I received something like a bolt out of the blue where I was asked telepathically if I was ready to receive a communication and willing to engage in communication even if this meant my life would change. I never had something like this pop into my head before, so I answered the call with a yes. That was the end of the initial communication until about a month later. I began having ideas about atomic structure and universal field theory out of the blue. I talked to my boss about this just in passing, and he suggested it was deep and I should write it down. I wrote it down and showed it to several physicists. Some offered pointers and suggestions and avenues of exploration, and most stated it contributed absolutely nothing to the field, but they did not offer any discourse to disprove it. None of the scientists told me I was completely wrong for any particular reason. I think they may have simply been placating me because they didn't want to get into an argument about physics with me, just like a philosopher may not want to engage in an argument about God. My unified field theory included no mathematical backing, but it made a suggestion on how mathematics may possibly proceed. Yes, it's written down. Yes, it's public. To me, it may as well be pseudoscience. Essentially, the theory is that matter itself represents the higher dimensions. During the theory creation, I had long periods of obsessive thoughts and questions. After I completed my draft of the theory and had several comments, I no longer had these thoughts because it was all written down. No more reason to think about anything deeply. Before sleep one evening, while laying down, I began having communications with some kind of entity. I'm quite aware of my own internal dialogue. This was different. Clear. Loud. I don't even remember what was said, but I asked, "Who are you?" mentally, and was presented with an image. The image looked very similar to a mantis head, but was large. Even though I could see the face and head, the body I could not see. I requested to see the body and was met with resistance and some kind of message that it might not be perceptible, would otherwise be confusing, and could cause damage to my psyche. I sort of chuckled at that and asked if he had some kind of body dysmorphic disorder or if he was just shy. My mind camera panned down and I saw what's best described as a cloud, dark gray, phasing in and out of existence. The Peanuts character Pigpen came to mind. Somehow long arms were sticking out of the cloud. The face and these arms and the neck of the figure were not clouds. He asked for my opinion on humanity and the human condition, asking if we were worth saving. I thought it was an odd question, and I said that yes, it's worth it. He asked me about love, small-scale violence and large-scale violence, and I offered my opinions. He asked me about mental disorders and disease. He was focused mainly on mental disorders, and I don't know why. I had studied to become a psychiatrist, but I abandoned this path in college. I gave him my opinions. He seemed open to answering questions, so I began asking him questions. I asked him where he was from, and he refused to answer. I pressed the question, and he answered like a politician, stating, "Far away in your terms, but close by in ours." He seemed to imply that there was a relay system in place for telepathic communications that was close by, and that others of his kind were near, or else the telepathic communication would not work. I asked him how telepathy worked, and he suggested it had much to do with quantum physics. He stated it was nothing special, but that some humans have gone crazy from communications, and he said I was doing remarkably well. I asked about conditions where his people are. He showed me a place that was dark and gray, almost like a cave system, but somehow made. It was also fairly open. I asked him what everyday life was like for them, and he essentially said mining. They were obsessed with obtaining a material, and he wouldn't discuss nor explain why it was important. I asked if it was metal, and he wouldn't answer. He stated the entire race was telepathic, and this meant limited independence and little to no privacy. I asked if he was a miner of this substance, and he implied he was not, but that the substance was not obtained for the benefit of his race, but another race of mantid creatures who were larger in stature, like the oligarchs of our planet. He seemed to imply that they were not exactly pleasant creatures and not to be trusted, like the politicians of this planet. That to us, they will have an ulterior motive that is perfectly clear to others like them, but we won't truly understand. I asked for his role, and he stated he was officially a doctor/architect. I asked if they had visited Earth, trying again to get where he was from. Instead of answering the question, he showed me a picture of his head superimposed on what looked like a typical gray alien. The eyes matched up. He truly did not answer the question, but implied while he himself did not visit, that gray aliens were somehow extensions of himself or others like him. He basically stated he enjoyed our conversation and liked me, and by the way, you have cancer in your right lung. He implied that I might be useful for something in the future, and that even though he might get in trouble, he was going to take care of it. I felt his long, phase-shifted hand reach through my collarbone just below my ribs into my lung, simply feeling like a moderate heat. Then he said it was taken care of. I asked him if he had a family, and he stated he did. I asked him if he loved his family. He stated that he did, but it was different than what we know of our concept of love. He stated that telepathic communication channels may have something to do with this. Then he asked me to get angry, pissed even, like I wanted to kill something. I complied. 4 or 5 more mantis beings showed up and began feeding on my emotions, urging me to provide them with more. I stopped being angry and they went away, and then the one came back. He told me the afterlife is like this. He implied that damaged, angry souls were tastier. There was something in there where he implied drug users enter this realm, or that was my understanding. I asked him if they believed in God, and he essentially said no. He said while they do have a religion of sorts, it has more to do with the sciences and political power structure than any real religion. I asked if he could provide some sort of proof to my family or anyone who may be convinced I was insane. He told me that in the future they will be known, but until then, no. Then I begged and pleaded, and he said that he would entertain the idea and come up with something. That was essentially the end of our conversation. The next day came. No signs and no UFOs popping down for me and my family to enjoy, so that I could tell them I communicated with something, and even though it sounded batshit insane, that it wasn't. However, the next day while I was giving my 2-year-old a bath, his eyes crossed like he was focusing on something that was right on the tip of his nose. He never acted like that before or since. I asked him what he was looking at, and he said bubble, as his eyes began to uncross like he was watching it float away from him. He was moving his hands in front of his face like he was trying to touch it, hesitantly, but it was moving away. I asked him, what color is it? And he replied green, as his eyes watched it apparently fly through the wall. Then I went outside, and 2 of the largest grasshoppers I've ever seen in my life were standing and watching me as I left my house, with eyes that were reminiscent of the eyes I saw the previous evening. The next night, I was asked if I was ready, and I said, okay. My mind became inundated with conversations of what felt like hundreds or thousands of these creatures. Some voices were louder than others. The conversations were actually mundane, truly. It was like I was some kind of rock star being harassed by hundreds or thousands of mantis groupies who wanted to entertain themselves, but bore me with their conversations and questions. I communicated where I could, but after 20 minutes or so, I told them I was afraid I might go absolutely insane. The same entity as before, who was acting as sort of a conduit for these voices, stepped in as a moderator and implied that this has truly been a problem in the past, and he wanted to protect me from the voices and stop them as I requested. He implied that he would contact me again when I was useful. All communication stopped. The 8 to 10 inch long grasshoppers disappeared. I was told not to relay any of this by the entity and that it would damage my usefulness later on. I've been without any contact for more than a year. I've contemplated every scenario in the past year, and I've decided I no longer want to be useful in this regard, and instead, I want to tell you all. Who knows, maybe this was the plan all along, and this is me being useful by making a post, but I doubt it. The more you look into this, the more commonalities you find, and that's why I've included these next three. They're all tales from contactees that have heard the same type of language being spoken by these creatures. And yes, there is a bit of psychedelic drug use mentioned, but try not to pin everything on them being blasted out of their mind on LSD or what have you, because while that helps, I'm sure, it is still considered abnormal for a drug trip of this kind. I personally have never spoken to giant bugs on psychedelics, but who knows, maybe I'm doing it wrong. I hope you enjoy these sage words spoken by the Mantis people. This is brought to us by user Corgi Heels. It's called Drugged at a Music Festival, Saw the Mantis and Wasp People. You know how it goes. My husband and I went to a huge music festival last June. Both of us enjoy a good weed, and I take CBD for my joints and mental health. At the festival, there was a booth selling CBD edibles, and around where we live, they're a trusted company. So we stopped by their booth and got some free samples. One of the individuals and I talked a fair bit about LSD and mushrooms, and I want to add I watched this guy get out the gummies and put them into a bag. After getting out 10 milligram CBD edibles, my husband and I took them as we were finishing up our time at the festival. 30 minutes or so go by. We're walking back to the car, and all of a sudden, everything gets bright. I mean, someone cranked the saturation on all the colors around me. I was freaking out a little bit, thinking it could have been a sunstroke episode. My husband was perfectly fine and relaxed. We were having two different experiences. Once in the car, everything hit. Like full-blown, thinking we were on a Hollywood set, driving, seeing music in the light rays. I got home and I was still on Planet Nebula. My husband got me laying down on the couch and had me focus on my breathing and close my eyes. When I closed my eyes, I saw what looked like neon vintage Las Vegas diamond-shaped signs spin and form into a mantis, then shift again into a wasp. While this was happening, the creatures spoke to me in a sort of electronic clicking vocal pattern. That's the best way I can explain it. It felt like it was only a minute or two of this, only to find out it took 20 minutes in real life, and I was just whimpering and tossing and turning. It was rather profound to me. The trip ended up lasting 3 days in total. One of our friends who studies psychedelics ended up coming over and helping me narrow down what my gummy was spiked with, and what we both decided was it must have been some sort of LSD or acid. Later that year, I ended up encountering these mantis beings in what I believed to be a state of sleep paralysis. They were right next to my bedside, observing me. This story was written by the lovely Iceman0276. Iceman. Alright, Iceman. Hit us with some mantis. It's just called Mantis Encounter. This happened about 8 years ago. At the time I was on mushrooms. Before dismissing my experience, I have to say I'm very experienced using mushrooms. I was on a low dose and coming down. I was sitting in a room I rented at the time on the second floor of a split-level home. I wasn't at a good place in life and I was pretty low vibrational. I wasn't having a good time and I just wanted to go to sleep. I was on my bed with my knees up to my chest, leaning on the wall trying to watch TV. I felt awful, physically and emotionally. I was going through a tough time, and I just felt a lot of negativity generally. As I sat there trying to get comfortable, I started hearing clicking noises. It almost sounded like the way Wi-Fi routers used to sound in the old days. The clicking noises became clearer and it started to sound like some kind of language. The clicking had a cadence of starts and stops that sounded like a conversation between two beings. As I realized this, I suddenly felt the presence of two beings hovering over me with their heads seemingly bowed down to the back of my head. It felt like they were feeding on me, or feeding off my negative energy. They lifted their heads up, and in my mind's eye, I saw and felt them above me, hovering just outside the house in the air. I got a clear image in my mind of a 6 to 7 foot mantis creature. The feeling and image were unmistakable. Once the image and feeling passed, I ran downstairs and told my roommates about the experience. I'm quite certain they thought I lost my mind. I truly have to say that before this experience, I had no knowledge whatsoever of any alien species associated with the mantis creatures. This made the experience even more bizarre. Only years later, while visiting other alien subs, did I come to find out that these entities exist. This is not my only extraterrestrial experience, but I know my psilocybin use may cause some to doubt it. Either way, here it is. We have user I am me and everything with an experience, a quick one. My personal experience was during Shavasana after yoga. I had a vision of communicating with a mantid-like being on a Mars-like planet. The being had a mechanical face that was like a mask, and I've seen the same type of mask online, drawn by other ET contactees as something used by other races. She spoke to me in a language, even though I get the sense she was a strong telepath. Even though the face was covered, I knew from recognizing the language, which sounded like a dolphin with clicking, that it was a mantid underneath. My sense of them from my own intuition surrounding that experience is that they're highly logical, intellect-loving beings. This can be wise and great, or at its worst, degrade to the point of being like, let's dissect every species. I think their consciousness is like not having the ego that we have and sort of existing as a telepathic collective, but wanting for the most brilliant ideas to rule and to be the best mind that thinks of them. Next, we're going to hear from someone who contacted these creatures at 7 years old in a dream state. He was shown around a ship of some kind. He was shown a planet that they live on. There were some grays present on the ship, and I don't know this guy's name, but wherever you are out there, Mr. Mantis, this one goes out to you.
At 7 years old, I fell asleep, and I woke up on a ship, and on this ship was a tall mantis-like being in a red and gold robe, and there were little gray beings next to this mantis being. And the mantis being wasn't speaking to me. It was speaking to me. And it was just basic stuff, like, don't worry. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to show you some stuff. And it felt like an experience, like a field trip. Is essentially what it felt like. It was slice of life. He showed me like basic ship layout, showed me their basic planet, showed me that they lived not too dissimilarly than we live or that we can relate to. Families, communities, structure, And in all this, I was just like wondering, where you're showing me geometric buildings, different planet, a ship, and then I was back. Did it really happen? I think it happened. I don't know if I can prove that. If I was 7, how do you prove that? You can't. And the general vibe I got from it was that this being, this tall mantis creature was prepping me. This is my speculative introspection on the event itself. My first not speculative, but my first formative event. And I think it was trying to prepare me for the life that had been set out ahead of me.
This next story was posted as a comment on a website called earthmysterynews.ca. The username is JBOYAN, Jboyan, I suppose. They reference somebody called SA, and I don't know who that is, where they come from. I don't know anything about SA, but it doesn't really matter because the story itself is lovely. We're going to take a little look at the Mantis home planet, or home realm. I hope you like it. Here we go, we're about to blast off. I just came across quite accidentally a video on YouTube about SA's Mantis experience, and it blew my mind not because it was new information, but because it was so very similar to my experience as well. In 2002, I was also in a meditative altered state, and I left my body just as SA described. I found myself in a pastel pink universe just floating. I was me, my human body. I felt and saw the presence of a giant entity coming closer. It was female, greenish and crystalline in structure. She was gigantic as SA described, 20 to 30 feet tall, but I had no way of discerning. She just felt that big. I had never heard or read of mantis aliens, nor did I really care for the subject, so I didn't even correlate the idea that she sort of looked like a mantis until much later. She also sent an incredible wave of thought energy filled with love that was warm and profound, and I had no idea such pureness could exist. It was the love of creation. Oh yeah. She held me and swooshed me to another planet while miniature versions of herself surrounded me, giggling and happy to see me again. Every time they touched me, they sent a bolt of warm light into my being. I had never felt more safe and more loved. In the distance, I saw a planet we quickly flew to. It looked like a crystalline cosmic garden. Greens, purples, and blues were the basic hues I associated with this place. It was beautiful. There was some sort of dome that looked like it was built of diamond fractals the size of a stadium. There were more mantis entities within, playing and creating gardens with thought. She gently put me on some sort of bed, or what seemed to be a bed to my human form, and she just sat there with me. The others would come and tell me how happy they were to see me again. I was so in awe of this influx of experience I couldn't formulate any questions or responses. All I could do was take it in and bathe in the light. It became clear that I was one of them, and this was my more permanent home, and I had been away for quite a while. After a few minutes, it was time for me to return home, and she held me again, flying me out of the dome and through space back into my body. It was then I was finally able to say something to her. I miss you. I don't want to go back. I want to stay with you. She responded by saying, you have to go back and finish your life and lessons. Just always remember that this love exists where you are, even if you've forgotten to look for and accept it. This experience is for you to remember and bring back with you. And with that, I found myself back in my body. You know, the more I hear about these creatures, the nicer they sound. At first, they kind of creeped me out, but they're sounding pretty groovy now. You know, they're all about love and light, it seems like, or so they are saying. I don't know. I don't necessarily trust them 100%. But this particular one seems like a pretty nice guy, seems like a nice chap. So, here we go. This is by user in Northwestern Seoul. And also, he mentions something called the Gateway tapes, and I'll play a little bit of that, just so you can get the feel here.
The two halves of your brain, the hemispheres, are starting to act and perform electrically as one unit. This is what is described as hemispheric synchronization, or hemisync as we call it. This greater natural brain-mind power is what you will learn to use. So relax for a moment and explore this new feeling of hemisync.
Without further ado, for context, I've only tripped a handful of times in my life, and for more than a year up until last weekend, I had not done any psychedelics. More than a year ago, I was very much skeptical on anything not proven by science, and while I'm still skeptical, I feel a lot more open-minded these days, even seeking potential experiences. With that being said, I also started listening to the Gateway tapes this summer, which has changed my outlook on life. In the last couple months, I had multiple dreams about mantid aliens, and the last two were fairly vivid. This weekend, I also tried 4-ACO-DMT, and during this trip I listened to one of these tapes and launched myself out of body, and then listened to another astral projection frequency, leaving my body again and encountering the mantid. This part of the trip felt much clearer than the rest of it, and honestly it had me dropping my jaw. Here's how it went. His name was Talcum, or at least that's what it sounded like. His real language is incomprehensible, so that's just the name he said I could call him. When his voice finally tuned in, he had what sounded like a slight East Asian accent. He apologized for rambling because he spoke like someone who was very excited and passionate. He's from many light years away, but he's been here a very long time. He and many have the technology to traverse the galaxy and others nearby, like Andromeda. The dreams I had prior to this trip were precognitive, letting me know of his arrival. When telling me this, I became apologetic because of the fear I had felt in my reaction seeing him in the last dream, to which he said not to worry about it and consoled me. It's his job to guide us in our elevated state of consciousness. He is a higher conscious being and does have a physical form, but it can't be revealed to Earth yet because of our fear of their appearance, but it will be soon, along with the others, due to our increasing recognition of them. There's many like him. He's not so unique, just as I am not. He chose to contact me because I'm actively elevating my consciousness on top of me seeking him out. He wants me to recognize that I was brought here to create and explore. I'm a musician, and most importantly, he wants me to keep loving and caring for those around me. When talking about love, he said to me, "I love you," and it felt so sincere that I reciprocated, at which point he opened his arms and shouted at me to give me a hug, and we hugged. Give me a hug! Give me a hug! I asked about the Greys, and he didn't really give me an answer at first, but ultimately said that not everything is going to be revealed to me at once. He had a sense of humor, calmed me down when I was feeling overwhelmed or veering with my thoughts, and kissed me on the head with his mandibles. Then he asked me to hold his hand, saying he'll be there. Even if his presence starts fading at the end of the trip, he'll be there. At the end of our interaction, he told me to say hi to my parents and my girlfriend. And that was it. I felt an awe afterwards, but I was afraid to tell anyone, fearing ridicule. I strangely missed this being, and I even hope to see him again. See? See, they're nice. No concerning behavior there, none at all. No, no, no. Certainly not screaming at you to give me a hug, and certainly not the forehead kiss with the gigantic insect mandibles. No. They're very nice, I promise. Nothing to see here. Say hi to your mom for me, say hi to your girlfriend. No, that's normal too. Coming from an alien. It's normal that he knows who your family is. Don't think about it. Alright. The show must go on.
Good morning. Good morning.
We're jumping in the way back machine here, all the way back to 2001. We have a story by UFO Nodder, or UFO Nodder, depending on what kind of person you are. This one's a little freaky, a little creepy, but what can I say, folks? I like it a little freaky. I like it a little creepy. I've posted this one before, but here it goes. I witnessed an alien abduction back in 2001. This takes place when I was 13. A friend of mine wanted me to help her grandparents set up their computer. I said sure and ride my bicycle to their house. I get there and clouds appear, so I decide to make it pretty quick. I set up the computer and install AOL for them, showing them all how it works and such. They go back and sit on the couch while I get my backpack and get ready to leave, as their other granddaughter, who's about 4 or 6 years old, is sleeping in the other room. All of a sudden a cold breeze shoots through the room, which was odd because all the doors and windows were shut. The grandparents looked towards the kitchen, and what I saw made me freeze in place. There were 3 creatures standing in the kitchen. 2 of them were short gray creatures with a thicker neck than usually described, and with eyes closer to the sides of their heads. They wore silver jumpsuits. In between them was a taller creature looking like a humanoid mantis, wearing a black robe with yellow stripes going down the middle. They walk into the other room, and a minute later returned with the robed creature carrying the granddaughter in its arms. It's looking at me, and I get the feeling it knows who I am. I don't know why, but I just got the feeling it did. I was very scared, more of the situation than of them, and the grandparents were looking at them too, but not doing anything. I decided to say screw this and fought off all the fear I could and clumsily charged towards them. I didn't even make it 3 steps before the grandfather stopped me and told me they were going to bring her back. The creatures didn't move and continued to look at me. I couldn't get any more words out of my throat because I didn't even know what to think at this point. All of a sudden, a light stretched out around them and they vanished. An odd glow remained for a few seconds after fading. After a minute of awkward silence and the grandfather repeating that she'll be brought back soon, I decided to leave. I rode my bicycle back home as fast as I could while looking back to see if there was some kind of ship hiding in the clouds. Nothing was there, and I didn't sleep that night. The next day I did tell my friend what happened, and she told me it happened before. The grandparents and other family members had tried to stop it, but to no avail. They just accepted it with a look of defeat and moved on. The granddaughter was brought back after a few hours. A while after this, their whole family moved elsewhere. I've heard from other people who claim to experience similar events, and I feel they're legit. Now all I can think about is how shattered the grandpa must be, just watching his granddaughter get carried away like that, just year after year, just staring at the wall. They're gonna bring her back. They're gonna bring her back. They're gonna bring her back. God damn. Poor guy. You know, he just needs to listen to the Gateway tapes, synchronize his hemispheres, then he can psychically duel them off. Come on, Grandpa. Get your hemispheres in shape.
Move now into your preparatory process. First, your energy conversion box. Use this. Then follow with your resonant tuning. And next, your resonant energy balloon.
And now, if you'll allow me to inflate your resonant energy balloon, we can float off to the next story. Brought to us by Anonymous. This is Alien Praying Mantis Abductions and Experiments, recalled by Experiencer. Isn't that a mouse? A mouseful. Isn't that a mouthful? Rolls off the tongue. Okay. Honestly, this one could be the granddaughter from the last story. We don't know. We really don't know. I remember experiencing a medical procedure as a child that I did not have in this reality. I recall vividly the dark red tinged room around me and laying on a metal table. While on the slab, I was being prodded and touched all over by seemingly giant praying mantis beings. I remember being horrified that they had bent arms, large black eyes, and insect bodies. I remember replicating their posture, which was them peering over at me with their arms by the side of their body and hooked wrists like T-Rex arms. I remember waking up while it was still dark that same night and my clothes were inside out. I even remember that I awoke feeling desperately thirsty and found my blue water bottle was no longer on the bed with me and had been thrown under the bed frame. I remember feeling like I was being watched, and the room felt weird. I was confused because I had gone to sleep holding the bottle and had been lying under the blanket. Even to my young self, it was a shock to be tangled up in blankets, half flung off the bed. I've always been a deep sleeper, and I usually wake up in the exact same position that I've fallen asleep in. People have commented on how still I sleep my entire life, and I've explained it's probably because I'm deaf, which means sound doesn't wake me, and I don't remain in a lighter stage of sleep. This also means it's hard for me to wake up, as I'm such a deep sleeper, so it's notable when I suddenly jerk awake. After waking on the other side of the bed with a completely disheveled bedspread, I was petrified of needles and blood tests. I suddenly developed a phobia and had to be held down to be given injections or needles. I remember my mum saying, "You used to be fine with needles and you watched them do it. Why are you acting like this? Stop thrashing around and trying to run. What happened to you?" I told my mother about them and called them disgusting cockroaches. She said it must have been a dream. The needle phobia became a huge proponent to my medical fears, which grew bigger and bigger. I became scared of the dentist, refused medical examinations or tests, and resisted medical visits. I started having dreams about medical teams coming into our home wearing white lab coats and feeling terrified when I saw them taking my family members to run tests. The dreams were nightmares that continued for a few years after the incident. I remember the beings as being detached and determined to meet their experiments or tests. These seemed human, but they were cold and detached. After some time, I recalled a memory of being in a medical setting with a huge light above my head and multiple faces holding instruments near my head and face. I asked my mom about it for years, even in my teens and early 20s, and she maintained that it never happened. As I've grown older, I've always remembered an even earlier encounter. I'm still wearing a nappy, and I'm on the table slab with the praying mantises around me. I don't remember waking up afterward or being fully conscious of what happened before and after, hence, starting with the earlier encounter remembered in more detail. However, it wasn't an isolated memory with the mantis beings. I did a meditation a few years ago to try to calm myself down before an experience with a needle. I was unwell for a while and needed weekly cannulations. I hadn't received a needle since I was 8 years old because the phobia had become so severe. I refused blood tests and would have obscene reactions in the dentist when they would try to insert needles until they started giving me gas to calm me down. So, during the meditation, I saw the mortifying ordeal of being on the slab with mantis beings around me and tools being pushed into my body. I could see instruments going into my belly button and the top of my head and even down my throat. I was nearly going to stop the meditation, but then, in an instant, the procedure was over. The next part of the memory resurfaced. Suddenly, the mantis beings didn't seem so terrifying. I was taken to a standing tank or cubicle that scanned me. It looked like a liquid but didn't feel solid, squishy, or wet. They showed me where my DNA needed to be taken and fixed, as there was something wrong with my genes. The chamber was a full body scanning instrument that would completely penetrate and view your entire DNA code and body. I was able to see an implant in my brain. It's been some time, but I do remember something about the implant in my brain, which was to help me reprogram and update my DNA. After this meditation, my needle phobia went away as I dealt with medical teams. Something to note was that I did the meditation which revealed faulty genetics before receiving a diagnosis for faulty genetics. I've had countless UFO sky sightings and other strange encounters, but this was the most real experience that was rich and vivid in detail, as if it was the same as recalling a birthday party as a child. If history has shown us one thing, I think it's pretty clear that it's never good to be on any type of stone slab. So, things could have gone a lot worse for her. In the end, I think it was a happy ending. They fixed her DNA, I guess, according to them. She's got a nice fancy brain implant. Who knows, maybe she can bend spoons with her mind and stuff now. I don't know, maybe she hasn't tried. Maybe all it takes is just trying one time, and then you're fucking Magneto, and then boom, world domination. So shout out to the aliens this time. I'm gonna give them a point. What a wild ride it's been tonight. Thank you very much for tuning in, lending your time to me, opening your ear holes to my melodious tones. I don't think this is the end for us covering the Mantis People, because the story keeps going and going and going, and every day people like you and me are talking to these things. They're saying, "What's up, Mr. Mantis? Do I have cancer in my right lung? Can I get a brain implant, please? Could you beam me to another dimension?" And I think maybe if I just tried hard enough, if I had the right sequence of thoughts, I think one would just materialize in my bedroom and I could just talk to it all night long, and I think it would be great. So I'm gonna go try to do that now. So to all you beautiful people out there, goodbye and good night.
Rattling chains, blowing out brains. Ghost Hall of Fame, spitting in multicolored flames. Rattling chains, blowing out brains. Ghost Hall of Fame, spitting in multicolored flames. When I'm done with you, you need the rotten demon teeth. When I'm done with that, I burn one up. I love the demon leaf. Bony translucent hands pulling sword out the sheath, leaving victims looking like a pile of ground beef. Ghost man sinking to the deep, past the coral reef. When I looked into her eyes, I fell into a deep sleep. Drain your cup, let the poison seep through the keyhole creep. Better check the window, did he leave?
Man abroad lives and dies. Dies dreaming of a destiny eternal in a fool's heaven. He dies of ignorance. He knows not of this life which can be made deathless.
Rattling chains, blowing out brains. Ghost Hall of Fame, spitting in multicolored flames. Rattling chains, blowing out brains. Ghost Hall of Fame, spitting in multicolored flames.
If you enjoyed the music tonight, check out my Bandcamp pages, DJ Family Recipe at bandcamp.com and reptileghost.bandcamp.com.